Cathryn Jeff. Welcome to another video. I thought I'd do a couple of watercolours. So just really quick, I think each one took about 15 minutes. Firstly that one, which is a really loose walk with a path through the country fields that I did the other week. And then one of a lake with the reflection of the sky and the branches just coming in after. So they're really quick, simple watercolours. You could maybe have a go as well if you want to try. So this is a photograph of a country walk I did last week, and I'm just lightly drawing in the path and the horizon line, putting my paints out. I'm wetting just the sky area for now, just so I get that nice blending of the paint. That's Turquoise and Payne's Grey from Cotman, Windsor Newton range. So I'm just going in with the damp paper and the sky. I'm just mixing some sort of hedgerow colour to do the distant trees. I didn't want to just use Payne's Grey, so I usually mix a few other bits with it. It's just use that Payne's Grey just to darken other colours. So just dabbing that on. I mean, it's still wet, so it's going to spread. That was the whole idea, to get the soft edges of the distant trees. So I'm just going in. It's good to leave sort of areas of white paper so it keeps it fresh with watercolour. I'm trying to get the sense of perspective by coming down at angles slightly. I'm just always trying to reuse paint that you've used in the sky or in other areas in any painting. Helps to create a sort of more uniform painting with repeated colours. Now that bled quite a lot in that area there, so I just dabbed it off a bit with the kitchen roll. Just building up the tones. I'm trying to get the sort of sense of the gravel path there. I'm holding my brush fairly flat to try and get some texture from the paper. I'm using Blockingford watercolour textured, which is cold pressed paper, 300 GSM. I felt some of the trees in the distance sort of went away to nothing, so I just went back there and added some more still while that paper's damp, so I didn't get any hard lines. Just keep on building up the layers. I'm darkening the foreground a little bit because dark colours leap forward at you, so it's good to do that in the foreground. Now here I've got a skewer and I'm just using the pointed end just to form a groove where the paint pools. It only works when you've got wet paint. And just mixed a dark colour there just to indicate some fence posts. Again, this is a real loose. I didn't want it too precise. In fact, it probably got a bit too precise for me. So sometimes you can work and work and work into a painting and then it loses its sort of looseness, the sort of free-flowing elements. So you can use the skewer that I used in the foreground on the trees in the distance if you don't want to use like a rigger brush. But I chose to just do the branches with a rigger brush, or liner brush as it's sometimes called. If you find the paint's a bit dark there when you first put it on, you can just dab it off lightly with a tissue or your finger and smudge it a bit. Just whatever makes it dull down a bit. So this is gouache, it's white gouache, which is basically watercolour with chalk in it, and it just makes it an opaque mix. So it sits on the surface more rather than it's translucent. And that's the final painting, a really quick country walk scene. So this is the second painting, Lake Reflections, I really like the colours in the sky that were reflecting in the water and the almost silhouetted tree. So always measure if you're doing a lake or something, or some water, if you're doing a definite horizon line or a line that sits level where it's water, I usually tend to measure mine. But do the pencil line really lightly, otherwise I've done it before in the past and I've pressed hard and the paint pulls into that area. So I've just mixed the same as the last painting, Payne's grey and turquoise. I just did a quick wash down to the horizon line on the wet paper. I haven't wetted anywhere else, and then just gone in with a more darker version for the clouds, and then dotting a yellow and a red there. So just mixing sort of hedgerow, sort of distant tree, dark colour. Now I know this looks dark for distant trees, but it always lightens, always soaks into that wet paper. Now I wanted a flat bottom, as it were, to the hedgerows where they meet the water, so I've just run a bit of brown tape there. It's called framer's tape that I use. It's really handy. I'm just wetting. This is a clean brush, clean water, and I knew that when I touched it the paint would bleed because it's still wet, so I only picked out a few areas. I'm just doing it again there because I wanted that crisp line in the distance where the light's catching on the top of the water. So that's why I missed out that bit, and I've just changed my brush there and went to a flat brush just to pull down some of those reflections from the trees. I'm actually using crimson for this and yellow, I think it's cadmium yellow. So a bit like with the sky, I'm just doing exactly the same but mirrored image in the lake. So I'm trying to avoid my reflections from my trees because I like how they look and I didn't want to ruin them, so sort of painting in around them. Here's with the painting in around them with the orange now, pale orange. Now there's a really dark sort of bank where the trees grow from, so just using the sort of mix of Payne's grey and a few other colours. Here I've got a clean flat brush and I'm just lifting out. I don't show it because I've edited this, but I am constantly wetting and drying off the excess water with a tissue, because every time you do a line you take off the paint, so you need to wash that off. So I'm on dry paper now. You quickly saw there that I hair dried the painting. I've got a flat brush to start to do the thicker branches of the trees coming in. You can use a rigger or a thicker rigger, maybe a 3 or a 4, but I find it just as easy to use a decent flat brush, and it gets those thicker branches in without having to go over and over and over. So I've now switched to a rigger. This is size 0. I always use a 0. And I'm not thinking about the branches too much. You can overthink them and take ages doing them because there's so many. So just go with the flow, and it doesn't matter if they don't all meet or there's gaps, or you can just overlay things, and it's good to have thinner and thicker ones, so if the paint runs out, just carry on for a little bit and get those fine ones, sort of broken lines as the paint's running out. So now I'm just got the main ones in. I'm just flicking all over with the smaller branches, just indicating one's coming at different angles, and it's quite a busy section of the painting. I've made sure I've got a darker mix compared to the trees in the background. I can see what colour they are now they're dry. So always think about your perspective and whether you've got the darkest lines in the front. And here there were just a few dead leaves on it was a winter scene, a few dead leaves clinging onto the branches, so I wanted to indicate those just by doing a few dots and marks, so it's not all uniform. Now I'm doing splashes to enhance that leaf effect that I just mentioned. I haven't masked the sky. I would recommend masking the sky if you're not confident with aiming your splashes. I do mine quite close. You can't tell on the camera, but I do mine quite close. And here I'm just flicking the water just to disperse some of those spotty sort of marks that I've just splattered. And finally just going in the distance with some branches, and that's it. I hope you've enjoyed the demo. Why don't you have a go yourself? Thanks for watching and see you next time.